Friends, beloved teachers, our real heroes, especially during this pandemic time. Ladies and gentlemen, a splendid day. Thank you so much for watching my video on demand and the previous videos on demand as well. Thank you so much for patronizing our videos through the courtesy of PCPD. So if I may tell you, the last videos posted for Compilan, which was entitled From Teaching to Leading Rewards and Challenges. I guess as of now, there's about 20,000 views already. I hope it could reach millions so that maybe we will be benefited by YouTube or by Facebook through posting our videos. And I guess some of you are also making your blogs, producing your blogs, or posting your videos in YouTube. Please continue to do so because you might be making money out of it. As for me personally, at this time that there is pandemic, so I have not been giving lectures in other parts of the country or going outside of the country to present anything, topics, no, or papers or presentation. I'm more focused now inside this room producing videos so I could also earn a little. Okay, so welcome to my room. So I have my peace lily here, and I have another plant here, and at the back is we have the map of Ireland when I had my presentation years back. And also we have the flags of the Philippines and the United States of America. Okay, so anyway, so much for that introduction. So our topic for this morning would be writing modules and books. So is there any one of you who has produced modules? I'm pretty sure yes. What about books? So, or are you even thinking of producing books? Right? So let's find out. Maybe this session can help you a little in whatever dream that you have. So as we say, think big, start small, learn fast. So it has been my quote also. As always, I think big of what I want to achieve, but you cannot start big. You have to start small. So that's what I do. I start small so that I could reach what is that big that I want to achieve. And in the process, of course, we have to learn fast. We have to acquire vast of knowledge so that the path that we are treading to reach our big dream will be possible. So by learning so fast, right? Okay, so I'd like to show you samples of the books that I have developed. I am an author and modules. So this is the I Learn Science, where I served as the editor for Science Grade 8. No, this is an activity-based book for Grade 7. And for Grade 8, I also serve as the author. And this is actually through the leadership of Dr. Giuseppe Bio, our UST Science Education Institute Executive Director. And just to give you a little background also of those two books, that one, the Anthology of Asian and African Literature, this one, I was actually teaching in Philippine Science High School then, maybe for a couple of years. And then I realized that the competencies of our syllabi come from the materials actually come from different books, and it was very difficult for me to look for resources. So what I did in the last 2 years I was handling the subject, I gathered all the materials that I needed, and then I asked the support of my students to help me compile the materials, and then I came up with the anthology of Asian and African literature. So I put introduction for every country, and then for every lesson, it's like a modular approach that I have a motivation, and then I have the lesson proper, and then it has also the comprehension questions, and it also covers the assessment, no, in this anthology of African and Asian literature. So this is only a product of experience, which I saw that there's really a darn need to come up with a book so that the next teacher handling the subject would have easier job, no? Because all the materials are already compiled here. And the students also will just grab a copy instead of searching for the materials from different books. All right. So, and a little background of this Global English for Filipinos, this was actually developed after I worked abroad, no? And when I looked at the books of DepEd, I'm sorry. So coming from different authors, so I just realized that when you are teaching using these different books, there's a tendency that you may not go to the class anymore, but just let the students open the book and say, "All right, open the book on page 15. Read the motivation. Okay, class, are you motivated now?" And then, okay, read the selection. And then after that, you can proceed with the comprehension questions and you can let them answer their activities. So personally, as a teacher, I became very lazy. So what I did was I organized the materials that I needed for the senior high school. And then I noticed that during the first quarter in senior high, normally it's more focused on the lifetime goals on taking examinations. So my theme then was setting your lifetime goals, and it's more focused on grammar, on language proficiency, so that the students would be ready to take the college entrance examinations. So that's how I arranged that. And the unit two, the theme is conquering your fears. It's more focused on personality development and interpersonal communication, even including personal hygiene, special graces, speaking and listening skills, then public speaking, job interview, and then argumentation and debate. So I covered the lessons by quarter. So first quarter was more on language proficiency. Second quarter was more on personality development. Third quarter was focused on honing your writing prowess, on writing compositions, business letters, resumes, and the highlight was the research paper. All right. So you see how I conceptualize it so that number one is they'll be ready with their skills in grammar, and then public speaking, personality development, and public speaking, and then writing, so that it's already a combination of all the skills, no? So that during the research presentation, they already have the skills on public speaking. And then the last quarter, I felt it was a light quarter already, so we focus on exploring world literature. So this is only where we introduce the literary pieces during the last quarter. So this was developed in when was that? Sometime in 2000. I couldn't find the year. 2009 or 2010. Yeah. Okay. So that's the background of why I developed these books. No? Okay, but the I learned science actually it was in preparation for the K to 12 program. So uh, we pulled the resources from Philippine Science High School through the leadership of Dr. Pio. So representing the different core sciences like physics, chemistry, biology, and then came up with a book for integrated science because there were no materials for integrated science. Okay. Then I'd like also to show to you my modules. So I developed many modules, but I'm showing you examples of my language proficiency modules. In fact, part of this actually is included in my Global English for Filipino book. So you see how a module can be a core component of the book that you're going to develop. So this is it. This is the module. So I label it by module one. So notice that in your module, as if you are communicating to the learner, no? And it's a self-paced learning, no? So without the intervention of the teacher, the student can proceed, can go through. So for example, here, the module one is focused on grammar, everything about grammar. Then the second module is on spelling, right? Then after that, the third module is on writing a composition. You see how it is ladderized, no? So from grammar to spelling to writing a composition, and then to reading comprehension, uh, then module 5 is public speaking. So as I was saying, this is a part of the book, the Global English for Filipinos that I developed. And then the end of this module is actually simulated test in English, which is actually a preparation for college admission test. So this is the module that I developed initially, and then I included this in the book Global English for Filipinos. And the other one module there is teaching the fast learners. Actually, it's a module for graduate school to my students enrolled in special education. So later on, I'll be discussing about the substantial parts and elements of a module. Right. So let's proceed now with the instructional module and its components. So uh, this will talk about the instructional module, the different parts, and then the suggested formats, no, for module making. And then this topic also will give us pointers on writing instructional objectives. And then it will also provide you some tips for effective writing. So the modules allow the learners to go through the material at their own pace, as I was saying, no? Because the moment they open the module, even without you there as a teacher, it's as if you are talking with the student in the module. And there are some questions, no, that the students would reflect and would imagine that you are there talking to the student. So it may be used for self-instruction or to complement instruction. So maybe you have already taught a lesson, but the module would improve, would complement the instruction that you have done, right? So this will be the objectives of our session. Number one, define what instructional module is, and then discuss the different components of a module and books, discuss some tips in effective writing, learn the contents and formats of modules and books. And then very important of our session for today would be to produce a sample module or just simply book ideas. Or yeah, you will be having two workshops after this session. Right. So what is a module? Okay, so we say that it's an instructional package dealing with a single conceptual unit of subject matter according to Russell in 1974. So the module is designed to help the students accomplish certain well-defined objectives. So that's why the objectives would serve as the Bible of the module. Then instruction here can be individualized. So as much as possible, in the module, you are the one speaking with the student. So learners go through the material at their own pace and time. So they can open it anytime they want. That's why it's called modular instruction. So any pace and time. So if they get tired, they can close it and then come back later on, Right. So, and as I said, may also be used to complement instruction. So you already have taught the lesson, but you want to complement it by giving a module. Okay, so we proceed with the components of a module. So number one, the format and style of a module may differ depending on its purpose and the institution where it is developed. So normally, an agency or a certain school or like DepEd, for example, would have a prescribed module. So the style and format may be different. So in the university also, the style and format may also be different. But more or less, the contents, the sequence would follow the scheme, no? So later on, I'll show you different formats for that. The components of each module should be, yeah. So this is the mandatory structure, no? So the different parts, you have the title, the overview or the rationale of the module, and then it's always there, the objectives. And of course, very important would be the discussion of the content. Then there should be self-check tests and evaluation activities and references. And do not forget, the modules is supposed to have the answer key. And I've heard stories from the children that they immediately proceed to the answer key to answer the evaluation activities, which is wrong, no? So maybe it's good to consider also that the answer key may just be sent by a messenger by the teacher, if that is possible. If there's other way that the answer key is not stated in the module. All right. So one part is the title, no? It shows the specific topic of the modules. A good title should be clear, concise, and reflective of its content. So basically, for example, in my graduate school course, it's teaching the fast learners. So that's a title that I gave, teaching the fast learners. All right. Secondly, is an overview. It serves as the introduction of the module and describe its scope and rationale. The overview summarizes the content and importance of the module. So in some modules, this section is called introduction, prospectus, or rationale, as what I've said earlier. So this gives a picture of what are they going to learn. All right. Okay. This is a comparison of the module format. So in the recent, not actually very recent, but Duldulao in 2000, and then we have Erie, and then we have Picard in 1997, and then CLSU ILO in 2000 also. So basically, you have almost similar no title, and then about the module. Here in Erie it's prospectus, in Picard it's rational, in CLSU it's scope, no? And then topic opener it's similar to rational, and then description and scope, and then overview. So there is a little difference in the second column, no? Is that column? Okay. And the third. Then we have objectives. Everything should be there. I mean, all formats should really have the objectives. And then you have in Duldulao is suggestive methodology. In IRRI is discussion of topics. Then strategies for Picard, discussion of topics also for CLSU. And then in Duldulao, you have materials and visuals, references, and evaluation. But in IRRI, no more. In Picard, yes. And then in CLSUs, there's self-check, evaluation, and references. So personally, when I develop module, yeah, that would cover everything. But I would normally start with, in the discussion proper, no, I would normally start still with motivation. And then I might include a pre-tests, and then the discussion per se, then comprehension question if there are questions, and then post-test to make sure if they're able to answer pre-test. Right? Okay. Okay, so we are now on the objectives part of the module. So we say that a common feature of most modules is a statement of learning objectives, or we call it as desired learning competences or target competences. So in the objectives, they explain the knowledge, skills, and attitudes you want to teach. They should be stated in terms of the learner's behaviors, objectives to focus and organize the information you would like to present. They also help the learners do self evaluation. So, in our professional education learning, we always remember that the objective should be cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. So, even in module, we consider it like a face-to-face instruction wherein we have to look into the pillars of education, that we are not only allowing the kids to learn to know, but we let them learn to do and learn to live and learn to be. That is really very important, that we are not only limited to learning to know, because that is the usual dilemma of teachers, only learning to know. All right. So verbs such as know and understand are vague and do not tell us what the learners will be doing to demonstrate their understanding. So remember the acronym SMART when writing your objective. So when we say SMART, S is specific, your objective should be specific. M is it should be measurable. A it should be attainable. R is realistic, and then T is time bound. So if your module would cover an hour period, asynchronous, no? So then it should be crafted or designed that way that it should only cover 1 hour. Do not bombard the students with so many things to do within the 1 hour period given to them, right? So next would be the list of specific verbs based on Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives in the cognitive domain. So these are examples of the verbs that you're going to use. So on the knowledge level, yes, define, record, list, and so on and so forth. In comprehension, translate, discuss, describe, recognize, synthesize. Application level is interpret, apply, employ, use, demonstrate. And then in the analysis level, you have criticize, distinguish, analyze, differentiate, appraise, sorry. And then in the synthesis level, you have compose, plan, propose, design. And then in the evaluation level, can be judge, appraise, evaluate, rate, and so on and so forth. So these are only examples of the verbs that you are supposed to use in your objectives. So again, let me remind you that your objective should be cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. The next part would be the discussion part. So the suggested format is to present all the objectives at the beginning, and then the presentation of content follows based on the stated objectives. So whatever your objectives are, your discussion should follow your objectives, and that is very important. So what information should be included in a training module according to MINIC? Classified materials that may be included in any instructional material as what they need to know, what is nice to know, maybe what is less nice to know, barely relevant, might be used someday. So that's the classification, or that's a sequence of the materials that you're going to place there. So organize your content for clarity. As read out noted, the structure is almost as important as the content. Yes, because if your structure is appealing, then the students will be enticed to learn. So organize your materials from simple to complex. Include pictures, diagrams, and other illustrations that may help clarify the information presented, including exercises and hands-on activities that the learner should engage in. Emphasize scientific principles and why in the topics being presented. So, in other words, it's not just a mere collection of text, no, but inclusion of other graphics, diagrams, and other illustrations so that the students will be interested to learn because module is something which is printed, all right? But uh, it should be well presented so that the students will be interested from the beginning till the end of your lesson. So next part would be evaluation. So it can be a self-check test, an exercise, or other means of assessing learning outcomes. These are the common features of a module. There can be a follow-up activity or topics for discussion to reinforce learning, right? So I noticed one time my daughter was doing exercises, no, and recording it because it was required in the module. So that can be a part of the module. What psychomotor activities are they going to do? So they can go to the field to do a field investigation because it's stated in the module, and then they just have to document it and submit it when they submit their module. All right. Then after your evaluation, you will have your references, a list of books or guides used in preparing the module or other materials that may be consulted for further understanding and appreciation of the lesson presented. So it's up for the learners to review based on the references that you have given. And it's also a way of respecting the sources of your information to avoid plagiarism. So style, another consideration is the style that you should use. Should it be formal? Should it be informal? Should it be conversational? So decide on the treatment you wish to adapt to your module. So regardless of the style used, what is important is always clarity and simplicity. So do not use highfalutin words that the students would not understand in your module. So make it simple and understandable. But again, you can choose if it's a formal one, if it's an informal one. But for me personally, I would always go for something which is conversational, something that I would be speaking with the learners as they go through. Right. So, instructional modules are learning materials designed primarily for independent or self-study. They may also be used to complement instruction. The recommended components of the module are, what are those again? Title, overview, objectives, discussion of topics, self-check tests, and evaluation of activities and references. So what is important is to write your objectives in behavioral terms, focus on what they need to know, the kind of information, and be sure to write it clearly and simply, right? So wrapping up, we have the 10 essential elements of a learning module. We have the title, we have the target learners, the rationale, the objectives, the general instructions, the pre-test and post-test, the lessons proper, of course, and then the key answer. Yeah, if you need to put the key answer, and then what other suggested readings that you want to include so that they can advance their learning, read more, and then the references. So why develop modules? Because very important for aims and learning outcomes. So what are those that we want our kids to produce? And then it is prescribed in the course content. And then it gives the teaching methods and resources that they need in the lesson. And then it also provides assessment. And then later on, there is monitoring and review. So how are you doing at this time, at this pandemic time, in your modular instruction? Are you following this cycle? Are you following this? Are you giving assessment? Are you monitoring and reviewing also the modules, the responses of our students in their submissions? Um, we should do this, and in fact it's also good if we do an action research to find out how our students are learning from our modular instruction. All right, so this is a sample of a template of your module, especially for pre-elementary education. Okay, We proceed now with the second part. A few ideas on book development. So, any one of you who is already an author of a book or a co-author of a book, or maybe an editor, or just a contributor of a book. All right. So, if not, if you're not yet an author or an editor, so maybe have you contemplated on coming up with a book, and what is the focus? What is the topic that you want to work on? So there is no saturation of topics. I know that almost all the materials are readily available in the market, but you can still contribute, no, material, mind you. Okay, so this is an example of the table of contents of the book that you might want to develop. So it starts with about the author. Then the author talks about my method and teaching style. Then, of course, there should be an introduction. Sometimes there is an acknowledgement as well. And then uh, there is how to achieve a rich, smooth sound using Kai energy, how to use the bell effect and playing the violin. So these are preludes, no, to the lesson propers. And then after that would be the lesson proper, no, lesson one, two, and three. Then after that, there are exercises every after lesson. And the last part would be the epilogue, okay, the closing portion of the book. Okay, and then there are some comments coming from the students, and then there are appendices included in the book. Okay, what are the 10 mistakes aspiring creative writers make? Number one is wondering how to find an agent or publisher before completing the project. Are you that one? Because if you do so, you won't really be able to write something because you're worried of your publisher already. That will just come later if you have developed a quality manuscript. Waiting for inspiration to hit. Okay, so maybe what you can do is just list down any possible topic that you have that you will be interested in, and then get inspired of those possible topics that you will be working on. Trying to write something different. Um, there are so many books with almost the same topic, but there is a different way. There's a different approach that you can use, right? Using weak nouns and verbs and passive voice, so it should be active, no? It should be strong. Deciding not to read in your genre because you don't want to inadvertently plagiarize. Um, you can read a lot first and then consider what is that that you want to zero in the book that you are going to develop. So not outlining. So be sure to outline everything that you want to focus on, whether it is a grammar book, it is a review material book, college entrance examination book, or is it a novel that you're writing, or it's something about life, is it about psychology, is it about special education, is it about politics, or is it about an autobiography or a biography of a person. So be sure to outline. Then not setting aside specific times to write. So be sure to set aside specific time to write because otherwise you'll just go astray if you're not guided with schedule. Not knowing what you want to communicate. So what is it that you want to communicate? Know what you want to communicate. So never reading a book or taking a class on the craft of fiction or screenplay writing. Yeah, it's very important to acquire the skills by reading and then by attending also workshops related to writing. So it takes a lot of skills. There are so many videos also in YouTube how you can improve your craft in writing, and then there's so many exercises you can do. Having an idea for an interesting situation, but not an interesting character. So have both interesting situation, interesting character, no, in your book that you're going to develop. It depends on the material that you're really developing, right? So how to write a book in 30 days? Wow, I'm now challenging you to write a book in 30 days if that is the only thing that you have to do. Okay, so number one is set attainable goals. So work out your average word count per minute times 60 for what you can attain hourly. So can you imagine if you want to write a book in 30 days? The number two, set realistic daily targets. How many hours can you write per day? Factor in breaks and the distractions. Then number three, keep time for different tasks. Split writing time into outlining, drafting, and other processes. A varied work stays more fun, no? So of course you have to consider other things that you do in a day. So how many hours will you devote for writing? And then motivate yourself using rewards. Give yourself a simple reward for each writing milestone to keep up motivation. Maybe coffee or milk tea, or maybe a simple snack, or maybe a simple object. All right. So make it a game. Don't apply unnecessary pressure that could decrease motivation. Treat it as a game. It's just like you're playing. And then write drunk. Give yourself the freedom to play and be giddy with words and ideas edit later. Yeah. So, in one of my writing classes before, so our professor told us that have a diary of ideas. You know what a diary of ideas is. So, no stopping of ideas. Just keep on writing. Do not be disturbed about the words that you use, the grammar, the spelling. So just keep on writing. Whatever comes out of your mind, so just keep on writing, and then later on, go back, reread. That's the time that you're going to delete some portions, fill in some portions you missed, and then edit now the grammar, edit the structure, change the word, look for another word for a better word for that. So that's it. So like drunk. Cheat and use shorthand. Use summary form and add notes where you don't have it all. Work out to keep momentum. So yeah, if you've already written the first draft, then you can delete, shortcut, write comments at the side so that you can proceed now with your second draft. Okay, and then celebrate progress. Whether or not you're finished in 30 days, you'll have something to develop and key learnings, no, from your experience. So how about that? Are you ready to write your book in 30 days? Create one 800 word piece of your story per day for a week and set a streak. That's coming from www.nownovel.com. Right, so I guess you are ready to write. Okay, so we are now on tips for writing a book. No? There is no right or wrong way to write a book. Ultimately, each author has to figure out how to tackle the project and what works for another. But there are some simple techniques and strategies that many authors have found useful, and this there are steps also involved that are essential if you intend to bring your book to a reading audience. So these tips for writing a book encourage you to think about your project before you commit and identify some key tasks that must be tackled in the process of writing a book from concept to publication. So number one is start with a concept. You might have 10 great ideas every day or just one brilliant idea in a decade. No? The trick is knowing which writing ideas to develop. No? So before fully committing to a book length project, make sure it's the right one for you. Something you're passionate about and can spend months months or years cultivating. So it might even be published posthumously. So what is important is you love doing it because you love the concept of that. Second is identify your audience. There's a difference between knowing your audience and writing for a market. No? If you love Star Trek, maybe you should write science fiction novels. It would be logical to assume that your audience will consist of Star Trek fans as well. And since you are a Star Trek fan, you'll automatically understand your audience. But don't look at the bestseller list. Determine that paranormal romance is all the rage and set out to write a book in the genre just because you think it's hot right now. There's a strong likelihood that by the time you finish your book, the fad will have passed and everyone will be reading historical war stories already. So write that you love what you love and know what your genre is. Number three is test your ideas with an outline. An outline can be as simple as a few key bullet points or so elaborate that it spans dozens of pages. It's up to you, really. Many writers don't use outlines at all. Outlines are like roadmaps, all right? So they provide you with a sense of direction, a route you can use as you draft your book. You have to decide if you work better with outlining or writing without a plan. So which is which? Try both and find what fits. Number four is decide how to publish. You might wait until after you finish your book before deciding how to publish. It can be a self-publishing or traditional publishing. But there are benefits to giving it consideration beforehand as well. Okay, just like the mistake I said earlier. If you're writing a nonfiction book, you may be able to get a book deal and an advance before you start writing if you go with traditional publishing. Right. So if you're writing a novel and plan to self-publish, you might want to learn about the self-publishing process while you're writing your book. All right. Number five is draft your book. While it's true that you're ultimately writing for an audience, most writers agree that as you write your first draft, you should actually write it for yourself, right? For yourself. Look at this way. You too are a reader. Therefore, you are reading your book. If you write a book that you'd love to read, others would love to read it too. So write for yourself first. Number six is think about marketing. If you write a book, people will read it, but only if you tell them about the book itself. Um, Marketing is all about making sure people are aware of your book. So there should be initial promotion already. It's very common at this time in social networks. So this is when you find your audience. All authors must engage in marketing in order to sell books. That's very important. So if you have the resources, your involvement may mean hiring a PR agency to handle the book of the marketing for you. But most of today's authors find that they have to spend more time marketing than writing. No? So how do you do that? Bonus marketing tip. You can start building a marketing platform long before you finish your book, maybe even before you start writing it. But just make sure that you're going to finish the book because you might have marketed it, but you have not finished the book or you're not really writing the book at all. The number seven is revisions, edit, and proofread. Don't send your first draft to anyone. That includes beta readers, agents, and editors. Don't even show it to your mom. You might need to rewrite the entire chapters. You might need to rearrange relationships in a novel or top off some of your favorite scenes because your mom doesn't like it. Your job is to produce the best book possible, so take the time to make changes that improve your work before you let anyone else lays eyes on it. So be sure that you are the master of that craft. Then number eight is engage beta readers and apply feedback. Once you've got a book that you think is really for readers, send it out to some trusted beta readers for evaluation, for assessment. In fact, they can even give comments and reviews about what you have written. Get people with exquisite grammar skills, invite their feedback, ask them how you can make your book even better, then weigh their suggestions and implement the ones that will improve your book. At the end of the day, you're still the author, the owner of the book. So you can gather as much comments as you want, but later on you can also be reflective of which of those you're going to consider. All right. So number nine is polish your final draft. Once your manuscript is in good order, go through and give it a final polish. Then, nobody likes to read a book peppered with typos. No? So check all the typographical errors. Um, there is an audience that won't even notice your typos, but you're not doing them any favors by delivering a faulty product. So make sure that error free. The book is error free. Then you'll want to bring in a professional editor during the polishing stages. If you publish traditionally, your publisher will provide an editor. But if it is personal, then you have to look for an editor yourself. Then publish and sell. Writing a book is only the first half of your first mission as an author. Once you get it written, you have to get it published as well. And then you have to sell it. Very important. Do some research on traditional and self-publishing. Look into marketing strategies for authors. Prepare for the ride because it will be a wild ride. Think of these tips for writing a book as general guidelines. Take what you need or what you think will be useful for your particular project. So, personally, when I produce my books, they did not give me really much royalty because my books were more use of the schools where I was connected with. Um, when I was in a private school, so that book was used in a private school for all the students, but from one generation to another, and then also in Philippine Science High School, that was used from one generation to another. I did not spend anything, but it was funded by the school. I got a little benefits in terms of remuneration, but I also got points from production. That's very important, no? That you get points for promotion or maybe for awards later on. So without you knowing it, you are getting benefits from your publications. All right. Uh, okay, now we're done with the tips on writing a book, and we're also done with the instructional module. Do you have any questions? At this point, you can raise your questions before we proceed with our workshop. Okay? So there are two outputs expected of you from this session. Otherwise, you won't get your certificate. So number one is choose a topic for a module fit for your grade level and write the module based on this contents. So these are the suggested contents, but you may have little variation and modification in your module. So based on our discussion, make sure that it's compact in terms of style and contents, no, of your module, and be very specific on the topic that you are giving. Like if it's grammar, it's only subject and verb agreement, or if it's writing, it's only essay writing. So you have to be focused on what particular topic that you want to work on. So these are the contents, the title, the overview of your module, what are your objectives, then the discussion of the content starting from uh, motivation, then reading, comprehension questions if there are, and then activities that they need to do, and then self-check tests, okay, if they have learned from that, and then what are your evaluation activities. It can be a test itself, or it can be project based. No, it can be a field investigation. It depends. No, and then don't forget to write your references. And then if you also want to include your answer key, that would be fine for workshop one. All right. And for workshop two, develop a concept of your book and produce the following. So number one is subject matter or the topic that you want to focus on, and then what's the rationale of your book or the overview of your book, and then maybe just share your table of contents, right? Just a table of contents. So these are some of the questions I selected for our open forum. Number one question is, how old were you when you started writing a book, or how many years in teaching? As I like to emphasize, there is actually no age classification when you want to write. So early on, as young as you are, you can start writing. But for me, since I had no opportunity to write yet, nobody guided me. So I only realized when I moved to Philippine Science High School that I needed to write because there was a perceived need of my students. So I was about 25 years old, I guess, and 5 years in teaching when I started working on the book. And after a year, I was able to develop a book, which was very, very helpful to the students. All right. So, what benefits did you get from writing books or modules? There are so many benefits that you can generate from writing books or modules. For me, the initial benefit that I got was it was very useful for my classes. My students were provided with the hard copy of the books, so it was easy for them. So we worked closely with the hard copies of the books and modules that I was using in the class. That's the best benefit that I get. Second benefit is I was able to share my book to the students and to other teachers as well, right? And to those who want to use my book for teaching. So that was another benefit. Another benefit is I earned points for my promotion and for application because it's very important that you have creative outputs and innovations, and that falls under creative outputs and innovations. They're very helpful. And last, remuneration, just a enough, no? To give me benefits from the laborious efforts I put in. But that's only secondary, right? So, what topics do you prefer in writing? So, basically, I have specialized in four, no? In language teaching, general science, administration and supervision, and special education. So, so far, I have developed almost all modules and books relevant to the fields, no, that I have engaged in. So it's really up to you. The next book maybe that I'd like to develop is more on autobiography for the last decades of my life as a teacher and administrator. All right. So how expensive is it to produce books? Well, it really depends, no? On my part, when I developed my books, the school funded the publication of my book. So I did not spend anything. And then I had royalty fee from uh, the books, especially in the private school. The students would purchase my books, and then I would get royalty fee for that. So if you are self-publishing, that can be expensive if you're not asking a printing press to shoulder for your costs. So sometimes you can ask publishing house actually to shoulder for the cost of production, and then you will just get a royalty fee. But of course, if you're the one spending for it, then you will also get all the benefits from your project. It really depends on your choice. Um, Last question is, are experts willing to serve as evaluators or editors? So far in my experience, yes. So, but before you proceed asking for editors and evaluators, you have to be an editor and evaluator yourself. So as I mentioned in our previous slides, I said that you should have draft many times. So because there are three R's no in writing. Number one is research. Conduct an intensive research of the topic that you will work on. Look for many books and materials that can be your references in your book. So research, and then after that, then rewrite. So when you are rewriting, you have your first draft and then second draft. Just have a diary of ideas, I said. So anything that you want to write, don't worry about the grammar, the spelling, the contents, and the structure. Work on it later on, but just keep on writing anything that you want to write. Okay. Then when you have your first draft, do your second draft by looking now at the contents. If you need to improve more, delete and add, delete and add, delete and add. And then after that, the next drafting would be look at your grammar, look at your unity of person, tenses, agreement of verbs and subjects, types of sentences that you use, and so on and so forth. No? In terms of grammar. And then next rewriting is look at your spelling, your diction, your choice of words, the structures of your sentences, normal structure, inverted structure, and so on and so forth. Then after that, that's the only time that you ask someone to read, a peer, a friend. After that, give to another person, give to another expert, give to another expert. So when you are done 100 times, that's the only time that you ask a panel, no, to evaluate your work, to give comments about the work that you are doing to improve, and then you will still go back to research, rewrite, and then report, and then ask the editor now to look into everything of your paper. So how is that? Isn't it tiring? Are you still interested to come up with a book, to develop a book? So these are the references of the whole presentation. Of course, our favorite friend, the Google University. I got a lot of materials there from Google and from YouTube. And then my last slide would be what we learn becomes part of who we are. Do you believe so? As we say, reading makes or unmakes a person. For me personally, it should be reading makes a person because you have to set aside those materials which are not making you. So only the good ones that you can consider. So as I would recall, I guess what I am today is a product of my readings as well and my learnings from what I've read, what I've seen from videos and from movies, for example, and all these things. Because what we are today is a product of what we have learned from the past and from different sources, from other people. Again, we learn becomes part of what we are. So, would you be willing to come up with your own books and have a memorabilia for the other learners and for your friends, for your family? So, I challenge you to come up with your own books now. Thank you, everyone, and more power. God bless.